"Can we get another round of wine here, sweetheart?" That was the first thing my aunt said to me, at my own father's birthday party. And no, I wasn't catering. I was invited, barely, as family. But the way they treated me? You'd think I'd crash the party through the kitchen door with a tray of shrimp cocktails. They didn't even recognize me. Correction, they chose not to, because for them I wasn't successful enough to count. Not like my sister, the golden girl. Ivy League, married rich, Pinterest perfect life. Every family gathering felt like a press conference for her next big life milestone. And me? I was always just figuring it out. Even when I got my degree, even when I moved to the city, even when I quietly started my own business, they still talked to me like I worked the register somewhere. And on that night, my father's 60th birthday, the entire family was there. Grand venue, champagne towers, string quartet, everyone dressed in black tie, except me. I wore simple heels, a navy jumpsuit, and a necklace my mother left me. Still, I stood tall, until they handed me a tray. "You're blocking the drinks table, hon," my cousin's wife smirked, placing an empty glass on the tray I was holding for my own water. I froze. She tilted her head like she pitied me, or was embarrassed for me. "Didn't know catering let family work events now?" Laughter rippled. My father didn't even glance over. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just being ignored. I was being erased. The years of biting my tongue, skipping events because I wasn't doing enough. The fake smiles, the "you'll find your thing" pats on the shoulder. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me small, familiar, convenient. But tonight, they were going to regret underestimating me. Because what they didn't know, what none of them ever bothered to ask, was that I wasn't figuring it out anymore. I'd made it. And not just scraped by. I was the founder and CEO of a growing AI consulting firm that had just landed a multi-million-dollar contract with one of the fastest scaling tech companies in the country. My LinkedIn was private, my business under a different name. And no, I didn't share the details over Christmas ham. Because success isn't something I scream, it's something I walk in wearing, when the time is right. And tonight was perfect. I kept my smile tight. "I'm not staff," I said softly. "I'm family." "Oh," my aunt blinked, awkward. Of course. I didn't recognize you." Of course she didn't. She never looked. 10 minutes later, I heard my name being whispered, in that shrill, gossipy tone that only comes from family who pretend to care while slowly gutting you from the inside out. "She's still doing that little website thing, right?" "No, I think she quit. Probably lives in a studio apartment with 8 cats." I stood by the bar, watching my father laugh with my sister's husband, watching my cousins pose for Instagram shots in front of the custom balloon arch, watching the servers glide past like they belonged more than I did. Then I saw the photographer tilt his camera toward me, and then away. I wasn't even part of the family slideshow, but I smiled because they didn't know who else I had invited. At exactly 8:17 p.m., the room fell silent. Heels echoed across the marble floor. Then they walked in. 5 of them, dressed to kill, my team. Not just employees, my executive team. All women, all brilliant, all powerful. And when the lead walked up to me and said, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Sorry we're late, boss," traffic was insane. Every glass in the room stopped midair. My cousin's wife choked on her Prosecco. My sister's jaw hit the dessert table. And my father, he finally looked at me. Really looked. "You want to know how I got here? It wasn't overnight. It was war, quiet, strategic, alone. But it started years ago, when my sister told me I shouldn't come to her wedding unless I could dress the part and not embarrass the family. So I stayed home that day, crying on the floor of my studio apartment, eating ramen while watching strangers toast to her future on Instagram stories. But that was the day I decided I would never beg for a seat at a table I could build myself. And tonight, they were all about to sit at mine. But the best part? They still had no idea just how big the moment was about to become. Because when I walked out the back door 5 minutes later, I wasn't leaving the party. I was leading my team upstairs to the private lounge, the one I'd rented weeks in advance, to launch a little surprise that would make this night one the entire family would never forget. The second I disappeared up those stairs, the room went back to its echo chamber of ignorance, but the whispers had changed. Now they were nervous. The cousin who had called me a ghost at family dinners was tugging at his collar, asking my sister if she knew what I did now. She didn't, and she hated that. Because the golden girl had always needed me to be less, so her shine looked brighter. But let me rewind just a bit, because this night, it wasn't random. This revenge, it had been simmering, slow, intentional, surgical. It started the moment I got my final birthday invitation, the one that read, "Formal attire. Please RSVP with any guests. Immediate family only. Immediate family only." And yet it came with a backhanded note from my sister. "If you do decide to come, maybe just help out instead of drawing attention. You know how Dad gets." Translation: don't be seen. Just serve. They always made me feel like a stray dog they kept feeding out of guilt. And the worst part? I used to believe them. I used to believe I wasn't worth much because I didn't have a shiny title or a picture-perfect relationship, because I wasn't her. My sister. She was the one who cut me off when she got engaged. Told me, bluntly, "It's just that we're only inviting successful family. I hope you understand." I did. I understood that she didn't want me in her curated life. I didn't match the aesthetic. But here's the thing. While she was planning her wedding on Pinterest, I was pouring every sleepless night into a company that no one saw coming. I built it from the ground up with nothing but grit, Google Docs, and the kind of desperation that either drowns you or turns you into fire. And every holiday, every dinner, every gathering, I stayed quiet, while they passed me mashed potatoes in judgment. So when I RSVP'd to Dad's birthday with a +5, I knew what I was doing. I knew they wouldn't check the names. And I knew eventually they'd find out that the waitress they kept mocking wasn't just successful. She was the reason 5 powerhouse women in designer suits had just walked into the room like they owned it. Because we did. And what I had planned next would flip the whole family dynamic upside down. But before that, I had to endure the last insult that would seal their fate. When I came back downstairs, after greeting my team upstairs and prepping for the moment, my father saw me. He raised his glass. For a second, I thought, maybe he'd acknowledge me. But then, with a smirk, he said, "Didn't know we were allowing +1s from the mailroom." Everyone laughed, including my sister. And that was the last straw. The final nail in the coffin of years of humiliation and dismissal. Because here's what they didn't know. Upstairs, in the VIP lounge I had personally booked, my team had just hit send on a press release. My company, Novastrat, had closed our biggest round of funding yet. And at that exact moment, my phone buzzed with a headline alert. Novastrat founder secures $12 million in Series A to revolutionize AI integration in law firms. The founder? Me. The same girl they thought couldn't afford a cocktail dress. But I didn't make a scene. I just walked to the DJ booth, whispered something, and 5 minutes later, the music stopped. The lights shifted. A video started playing on the projector, the one meant for family baby photos and cheesy memories. But this wasn't that. It was our company highlight reel. Team clips, innovation sizzles, office culture, headlines. Then, my face, and the words, "Founder and CEO, Miranda Lane." Silence. Then chaos. My sister shot to her feet like she'd seen a ghost. My father's glass slipped out of his hand. My aunt gasped, clutched her pearls. Yes, literally. And as the music swelled, I stepped into the spotlight, microphone in hand. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly. "I just wanted to say thank you for reminding me who I never want to become." I paused. I was told once I wasn't welcome unless I brought something of value to this family. So I brought 5 brilliant women, a multi-million-dollar company, and a press release that just went live 10 minutes ago. I smiled at my sister. "You said only successful family was allowed." Well, I took that to heart, and I delivered. The room didn't know whether to applaud or melt into the floor. And then one by one, people started clapping. Not the family, the staff, the servers, the DJ, the photographer, and finally, some cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. But the best part? My father couldn't speak. Because for the first time in his life, he couldn't deny me. He couldn't mock me. He couldn't correct me. He couldn't laugh at me. Because the world was watching. That video, already posted to LinkedIn, already trending. His invisible daughter had just become the name that would outlive his party, his toast, and his snide remarks. But I wasn't done. I leaned into the mic one last time and said, "Oh, and by the way, I already took care of the bill. This party's on me." The look on their faces, worth every second of the silent war I fought alone. You could hear a pin drop. The clapping had stopped, the smiles had frozen, and my family, the same people who treated me like lint on their tailored sleeves, were now trying to figure out how to recalculate me. My sister looked like she was searching for an off switch on reality. She blinked, forced a laugh, tried to recover. "Wait, you're joking, right? This is like a pitch or something? A prank?" I didn't even flinch. "No," I said, smiling. "It's my life, just not the version you ever cared to ask about." Then I turned away. I wasn't here to prove anything to her, or any of them. But Karma? Karma had other plans. I stepped off the small stage and immediately my team surrounded me. Hugs, cheers, proud eyes. And then the photographer, the same one who had turned his camera away earlier, asked, "Would you mind if we took a few portraits upstairs? Novastrat's launch video is already trending." That's when it hit them. This wasn't some petty mic drop. This was a media moment, and they were just the awkward extras in the background. My father finally made his way toward me, a little drunk, a little shaken, very, very confused. He tried to sound proud, but it came out like gravel and regret. "You should have told us, Miranda. I would have supported you." I tilted my head. "Would you have? Or would you have told me to get a real job again?" His mouth opened, then closed. "I was never hiding," I added. "You were just never looking. But the pièce de résistance? That came later. See, the private lounge upstairs wasn't just for fun, it was for the deal. Because one of the people at the party, someone my family had brushed off as just another +1, was a tech investor, and we had planned it weeks before. She had asked to meet my team in person before finalizing the next round of funding. And this party? This was perfect. A controlled environment, the spotlight already on me, my team glowing and fierce, while my family stood awkwardly in their sequins, watching a new empire form. Without them. As I walked upstairs again, this time with an entourage of respect trailing behind me, I passed my sister. She reached out, touching my arm. "Miranda, why didn't you tell me? We could have collaborated or something." Collaborated. The same woman who once told me not to wear anything too off-brand at her rehearsal dinner now wanted a partnership. I looked her dead in the eye. "Because you didn't want a sister. You wanted an accessory." Then I kept walking. In the lounge, my investor greeted me with a hug and a glass of champagne. "That entrance," she whispered, "was legendary." I laughed, but my heart was thudding. This moment, this wasn't just personal. It was pivotal. My business wasn't just real. It was powerful. And right there, overlooking the very party that tried to bury me in shame, we signed the deal. $12 million secured on paper. I had just closed a deal in the same building where they called me a waitress. You can't write that, but I lived it. When I returned downstairs an hour later, the mood had shifted entirely. People were polite, too polite. The same aunts who never returned my calls were suddenly curious about AI and the tech world. My cousins were asking if I had jobs available. And my father? Sitting alone, staring at the floor like he was watching the foundation of his favoritism crumble. Then came the twist. Because as the party wound down, the staff coordinator came up to me and whispered, "Your sister tried to take credit for the bill, said she coordinated the payment and wants her name on the thank you cards." I laughed. Out loud. This woman would rather lie than admit her sister had outshone her without even trying. So I turned, walked right over, and said, "Hey, I just spoke to the coordinator. Want to clarify something?" She blinked. "I was just trying to help." "No," I said calmly. "You're trying to rewrite history, like always." Then I pulled something out of my purse, the custom thank you card I had printed in advance. It read, "Happy 60th, Dad. From your invisible daughter, now founder and CEO." I handed it to him in front of everyone, and with that, I walked out. No dramatic exit, no fireworks, just silence, the kind that follows a storm. Because the girl they overlooked, she had just become the story they couldn't stop talking about. What no one knew yet, and what I wasn't even sure I'd reveal, was this: that this wasn't just my revenge. It was my origin story, because I didn't just show up to that party with a grudge. I showed up with an empire, and they'll remember it every time they tell someone this story, and have to admit who I am. I didn't slam the door when I left that party, didn't turn back, didn't wait for applause, because walking out in silence, with every eye on my back and every jaw on the floor, was louder than anything I could have said. But let's be honest, I wanted to look back, to watch their faces crumple.
To see them realize, too late, that the one they buried in silence came back as a storm. Instead, I took a breath. The kind you take when the weight of a decade finally slides off your shoulders. That night, I got a text from my father. One line. "You've made your point." Congrats, not "I'm proud," not "I'm sorry." Just a line that tried to act like he wasn't the reason I sharpened my ambition into a weapon. And you know what? It didn't sting like I thought it would, because I had already stopped needing it. Their approval, their permission, it was never mine to chase. It was theirs to lose. A week later, my sister's wedding invitations went out. And surprise, surprise, my name wasn't on the guest list, not as a guest, not even as +1. She even had the nerve to email me saying, "Since you're probably busy with your tech stuff, I figured you wouldn't want to be bothered." The audacity would have been funny if it hadn't been so predictable, but here's where the story gets cold and perfect, because there was one little piece of info she hadn't figured out. You remember how I said Nova Strat was revolutionizing law firms? What I didn't say was this: our tech had just been adopted statewide, including by the judicial office, meaning I now worked directly with the court licensing system, not just legally, officially, which meant when her wedding license hit the state system, guess whose name showed up as the final sign-off required? Mine. Yep, me. The girl too unsuccessful to be seen at family events was the one person holding the pen that made her marriage legal. When I saw her name pop up, I almost laughed, but I didn't delay it. I didn't sabotage it. I just signed it, with precision, and under my title, Senior Officer, Legal Tech Judicial Integration, a position she didn't even know existed. So no, I didn't crash her wedding. I ran it, silently, legally, from a desk with a view she'd never earn, all while she smiled for photos in a dress I knew her fiancé had put on credit. The real twist? A few weeks later, she posted her wedding album, captioned, "Surrounded by all our loving, successful family." She really thought that would sting. But as I looked through the photos, something shifted. It didn't hurt. It felt hollow. Because the people in that photo, they were never my family. Not really. Just characters in a story I'd finally stopped auditioning for. Now here's where I'll leave you. After the party, after the press, after the deal, I didn't just keep winning. I started choosing what winning meant. I built scholarships under my mother's maiden name for girls whose voices were always talked over at the dinner table. I hired women returning from career breaks. I funded startups no one else would bet on. I made sure that being overlooked would never mean being left behind. Not on my watch, because success is one thing. But legacy is the part they can't take credit for. I didn't sabotage her wedding. I did something worse. I became unforgettable. She wanted to erase me, so I became the headline. She wanted me silent, so I became the voice. She wanted me gone, but instead, I became the one thing she could never ignore. And if you're watching this, and you've been called too quiet, too soft, too late, or not enough, let me tell you something loud and clear. You are not invisible. You are just loading. So when they laugh, let them. Because when you finally walk into that room with your head high and your work louder than your wounds, they'll choke on every underestimation they ever whispered behind your back. Have you ever been cut off by your own family? Tell me below. Like and subscribe if you believe success is the best revenge. Share this with someone who needs to hear. You are enough. And remember, they wanted me small. I became the storm.